Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Mindshifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeannie. Michael and Jeannie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rachma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeannie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce.
To the brightness within you and the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to Mindshifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor. That's Dr. Michael Ryce. And today is Memorial Day Celebration 169. Michael will talk about that a little bit here in a minute. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. Press 1, and that'll let me know that you want to talk to Michael, and I'll turn you on. Dr. Tim is not with us yet, but David is on. Welcome, David. Hi, Michael. You're not on, Michael.
Oh, excuse me, I had my mute button pushed.
There you go.
A quick update on Memorial Day, and we need to maybe set a calendar in motion, and we'll combine Memorial Day and Veterans Day because, of course, our honoring of both of those days is the same, and that is that we're going to invite you to be part, all of our listeners to be part of, eradicating war on planet Earth. And we're going to do that by inviting you to look at some issue in your life where you have some form of hostility or fear today and apply the Aramaic tool of forgiveness to that hostility or fear to remove that hostility or fear from planet Earth. You know, there's an awesome line in a book called A Course in Miracles. It says, millions yet unborn will benefit from the work that you do. As you do your work, you open a space on planet Earth for a shift and a change. The basic principle that it's been running the planet for too long is pretty bizarre. War is at its root, and we're here to change it. There's a man 2,000 years ago that tried to change it, and now people make war in his name, which is pretty interesting because when people are steeped in the insanity of the old world, the most important tool they could possibly have is the tool that takes them out of that insanity, to be able to recognize what is insane, and no matter how threatened they've been, if they throw it away, to throw it away and go to sanity. So here we are looking to function as human beings. If you are not sure what a human being is, hold a newborn child. You'll know exactly what a human being is. That's our definition. No words to it, just a direct experience. And our offering is that that's how we're designed to function. Everything else is insane. And so if you find yourself functioning in an insane way, and of course normally people blame somebody else for that, what we're going to ask you to do instead of blaming someone else is to say, I have some hostility or fear in me. Hostility or fear leads me to blame. Blame ultimately leads to war. And if I'm willing at this point to delete this hostility and this fear at this moment, I could make a change on the planet. And by making that change, I can create a different world. And so that's what we're here to do. If you're not familiar with the forgiveness conversation, what we'll invite you to do, please, is to go to our website, www.whyagain.com. You can download the whole book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? It's all about forgiveness. It's all about learning to move past the projections in the game that anybody could possibly be to blame for what's happening inside of you, and how to go about forgiving what's happening inside of you. And bypassing the culture's insane form of forgiveness, which means you did something terrible, but I'll let you off the hook. And, of course, letting somebody else off the hook for what's happening inside of you leaves you locked into whatever's happening inside of you. We're looking to support you in changing what's happening inside of you, therefore changing this dynamic on planet Earth. So that's our forgiveness work. If you go to whyagain.com, on the right-hand side you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. The first 5 links are relevant to our conversation. So pick up those first 5 links, read the chapter from the book, the worksheets there, There are 2 radio shows that give you just a very powerful look at how forgiveness works and guides you through the process. And then the 5th link for those who have nothing to work on gives you a list of possible issues or situations to work on. So we ask you to do that. And we'd also invite you, as you have questions about anything to do with this work, to pick up the phone and call us. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. I was noticing yesterday, we did a workshop, we did actually 2 services and a workshop at Unity in St. Petersburg yesterday, and I noticed that most everyone that I got close to had a question. Well, come here, I want to get your ear. I want to have a conversation with you. I have a question for you. It's just a little one, right? And then, there are questions upon questions upon questions. Just about every person I could spend hours and hours and days and weeks and months with answering those questions. I suspect that you as a listener have some of those questions, and you haven't called with them yet. If you had me on a one-on-one basis, and you can do this totally anonymously, just give us a name so I know what to call you, whether it's Harry or Bill or Mary or whatever, it doesn't matter. I would certainly like to know your actual name so I can tap into your energy and where you're calling from. But other than that, no identification is required. And ask your question. Your question is the same question as somebody else has got. If you had my ear privately, sitting in a private room right now, what would your question be? Call us. Let us know what that question is. And David, welcome to the show. We've missed you for a few days, and I know you've been traveling, and you're back at Heartland. How do you do, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm traveling with Chuck right now, so I may need to let you know when we reach a quiet place. We're getting ready to be back on the road again with the wind. And other than that, it's going well. Beautiful day here in Theodosia, and just continuing the process of raising the level of consciousness and in support of other people doing the same thing. As you mentioned a few minutes ago about the questions that people would be wanting to pull from the side to side, that, I have this question, I have this question, I have this question. And one of the things that I've come to understand, as soon as I have one question answered, I have another one that's there. And energetically, as you pointed out, when someone gets on the phone here or gets on the air here and asks a question and initiates it, then it answers questions for lots of people, for we're all connected and through that vibratory energies to be able to learn something new and to then to develop that as well. So that's my feedback for right now. You may notice some sounds. Are you there?
I'm here, David, and you sound pretty good, and we're glad to have you back on the show, and glad to have you back at Heartland, and we certainly hold your process that you've been going through the last couple of months in a blessing and in our hearts.
Thank you very much. And, go ahead.
I say the fact that you're traveling with Chuck, and for those who don't know Chuck is someone who's been coming to Heartland for the last 4 or 5 years, and he and his significant other just bought a house, a farm actually, a really nice piece of property just down the road, and it's becoming part of the Heartland residential community right there in Theodosia, Missouri. So, Chuck, have any thoughts for us?
Hold on a second, I'll hand him the phone. Well, it's good to be home. I know that.
It's good to have you home, and
that's probably the only thoughts I have right now, Michael. So,
I was just introducing you to our audience and inviting any thoughts you have about your new home or Heartland or the work or how it's impacted you. Would be cool to hear you share a little bit about it.
I think for me, this work that you offer has been, transformational for me, and definitely a journey.
It is quite a journey, isn't it?
It's certainly made a difference for me and different challenges that I've had through my life and things that come up now. I very much appreciate it.
Well, it's a delight to have you on our team and to be sharing the planet with you, Chuck. And we'll look forward to Magda arriving. Do we know when she's going to arrive yet?
It looks like it's probably going to be mid-December. We had a conversation about this the other evening, and she has just decided she doesn't want to put any pressure on herself and having to get here quickly. And I think we'll close on the property by the latter part of this month. And she's just packing, putting everything together and packing to make the move. So that's what, right now that's the best guess on when she'll be getting here. It's going to be the second week in December.
Very cool. Well, welcome to the show. Glad you're with us. And, Amy, do we have any callers in the chat room?
We actually have 3 people holding on, so let's take the first one. Area code 970. You're on the air. Who do we have, and where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm calling from Ormond Beach, Florida.
Oh, welcome. Glad you're here. Let me see. Ormond is just north of West Palm Beach, an hour or two?
No, just north of Daytona Beach.
Further up than I was thinking then. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Glad you're with us.
Michael,
You're not too far from us. We're in...
I'm trying to decide if I should call in on a different phone. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. This is Carrie. And, Michael, I just want to say I've watched your work for a long time, and I'm just absolutely, totally impressed with where it's gotten to these days. And I've personally been through the ending of a relationship. I'm going to cry. It's terrible. Anyway, which was very difficult for me, and I consider myself a pretty aware person, and I know that I create my reality, and still, I don't know that I've had as good a tools as I've needed to get myself really healed, So, are you still there?
I am here, Carrie, and first off, I breathe with you. I join you in breathing and open the space for these deeper parts of your mind that hold lessons and healing for you through the completion of this phase of the relationship. I don't believe relationships ever end. Once we make that connection with someone, they are eternal, although a particular form of them may end. So I just am here to hold the space for whatever lessons need to come for you and for him, and to see you on the other side of it in a more whole, more connected state with the grief and loss resolved and held in a blessing.
Thank you. Well, I downloaded your worksheets yesterday, and I actually spent a few hours going through them, and I was just really amazed at kind of the process that it took me through. Even though I had known pieces of this before, where you've gotten it kind of honed to it's just very effective, and I feel like I was tapping into some really deep, the one that I think struck me the most initially was the early memories exercise, and how I've repeated those patterns in my life. I'm just sitting here thinking, I see that you're in Florida for the next few months. I'm thinking, I think I'm going to follow Michael around and go to all his workshops and just go through this process until I've got it really good, until I really can clear and heal and get myself to a place of just solid inner peace.
Well, we are going to do on Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to do 2 of our key workshops on relationships. We're going to do healing through relationships, and we're going to do codependence to interdependence. If you have the space, and I don't know just what your obligations are there, but if you have the space and you'd like to make a journey over and spend a couple of days, we could very possibly, if you think you might want to do that, put out to the congregation. For those who don't know Carrie's the author of a couple of books on healing through food, has just done awesome work. We've known each other for geez, about 25 years now, Carrie, maybe a little more than that.
I'd say 30 years probably, pretty close.
Since the old days up in Michigan. And so I would feel very comfortable in tonight, if you're interested, putting out to our audience, asking if there's anybody that would be willing to put you up, and if you want to come over. I think we're probably about a 2.5-hour drive from Mormon Beach, so
yeah, it probably is.
Both welcome.
Well, let me contemplate that, and I'll give you a call back later. And if I feel like I can, I would actually love to. And I'm not sure my dog is really well right now, and I don't know if I want to leave her for a couple days. So let me just contemplate that a little bit. Thank you for the offer.
Sure, and we'll be doing this again. Actually, we're going to do it, I'm not sure. We're a few weeks away from doing it again in Florida, but we'll be doing it in January, February. So if this doesn't work, that would be...
I was looking at those calendars and thinking, if I was in a different position this week, I would run over there right now. But I think it may not be appropriate for me, but I was definitely looking at the later calendars and thinking. And so I have a couple of questions. One is, and I know that this is probably... I sort of know the answer to it because I've heard the answer, through Byron Katie work and all different places, how we magnetically draw people into our world. And I understand that, but I guess I'd like you to, once we're totally clear inside, is nobody ever going to show up in our world who is expressing, negative emotions to us? Or is that just, I feel like I've really wrestled with my soul over, I'm really excited that you have a process that is so clear-cut, and I am going to utilize it to the fullest, because I've already done a lot of work in this area and obviously not gotten myself completely clear. In fact, I've had a friend show up here in Florida. I've been here about 5-6 months now since my relationship ended, but a male who actually goes into rages at me, and I realize it's bringing up. Now, the guy that I was in the relationship with didn't really do that, but it's bringing up the same issues. But, once we get so clear that nobody ever shows up in our world with funky emotions? Or I guess that's kind of the biggest question I have today.
Okay, well, I would offer a different question that I think will shed more light on that question, and that is there ever going to come a time when I enter into a situation with someone, whether I'm in a close relationship or a distant relationship, where I'm going to have something unlike love show up in me? That's the real question. Whether somebody shows up in rage or grief or pain or terror or hatred or vengeance or whatever really isn't the problem. The problem is if somebody shows up in their rage, their terror, their hatred, their vengeance, whatever it is, what does that bring up for me? Is it something that causes me to flinch? Is it something that causes me to give up my human life? As we started the show out, I threw out the thought about what a human being is. Hold a newborn. That's your natural state. If something shows up that brings something less than your natural state forward, the problem is not the person who's showing up in rage. If you're in your natural state as the awesome being and the presence of love that you are, if you're in that natural state, then you will simply be a space of love and compassion when the rager shows up. You'll go, whoa, what's paining you? What's traumatizing you? What's going on for you? Can I support you? As opposed to, oh, my God, another rager. So,
oh, nice. I like that.
So to me, that would be the real question, is when this person does whatever they do, and if I hold something unresolved in me, literally, and I don't know if you remember years ago, I did some work. I would speak in the workshop about the work I did with Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. And Marcel had instrumentation in his laboratory with which to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. If I hold an unresolved grief in me, let's say I hold an unresolved grief over people who rage, then that literal unresolved grief sets up a field that says, over this silent, energetic, measurable energy wave, which I like to call the psychic megaphone, hey, is there anybody in town who could rage for me? I've got some unresolved grief about rage. And They'll show up. It's guaranteed. The promise of the world is ask and you receive. They will arrive. Guess who's coming to dinner? They're going to show up, and they're going to do their rage thing. When they do their rage thing, I'm going to go into grief, but if I'm in denial and I've dissociated from my grief about ragers, then I'm going to look at this person and say, you really have a problem. Look at your rage. If you just change your rage, then I would never have to feel this grief again, and everything would be okay in my life. When you wake up, the statement in that situation is, wow, I see that there's a lot of rage coming from you, and what that's bringing up for me is grief, and now my conversation is going to be about me and my grief. And I realize that I have a problem, and my problem is grief about what I perceive to be your rage. And so when I resolve my grief about that, then I'll stand in the face of the rager as a space of love, and the presence and the power of my love, if there is an opening in that person for the healing of their rage, will tend to start to dissolve their rage for them. That will be the result that happens. And, if you think about this psychic megaphone, one of the questions I'll often ask in the workshop is, how many of you have ever walked into somebody's space totally committed to being nurturing, loving, caring, and all of a sudden found yourself functioning like a mad banshee? And, most everybody gives a laugh and puts their hand up. Yeah, I've done that. Do you know why you did that? I don't have a clue why I did that. Well, here's exactly why you did that. You walked into the field of their psychic megaphone that demanded a mad banshee, and you just happened to have the right one. So their issue is the fact they called it forward. That's their responsibility. They're not forward. They're not responsible for the fact that you have a particular quality of mad banshee. You are. And so in a relationship through which we get to heal, and this is what we get into in our Healing Through Relationships workshop, what's going to happen is I'll get to heal the part of me that needs this mad banshee. You'll get to heal the part of you that has that mad banshee. And now we've turned this situation into an awesome healing process. As opposed to, I blame you for being a mad banshee, and you blame me for being in my grief or whatever it is that's going on for me. And virtually everybody's walked into somebody's space and just went blotto unconscious and had no idea why they did the crazy stuff they did. And it's because the capacity for that was in it. And the promise of the Creator is, to me, it's kind of like the state of the Creator is, I don't like you to be diseased. So here's how I've set it up. I've set up the energy system so that if there's anything in you with which you are killing yourself, that is something you've dissociated from, locked as a dis-ease in your tissue structure, I'm going to set up a field out of that that's going to pull somebody in to give you the opportunity to heal it. When they show up doing what they do, if you stop having conversations all about them and blaming them, and you start having conversations about yourself and owning what's going on inside of you, then you'll get to access, courtesy of your mad banshee who just came into your room, you're going to get to access and process that part of you that has loss or rage or grief or fear, whatever it happens to be. And that's the relationship based in perfectly matching bags of garbage. And the Creator promises us every one of those that we need. And that's why I suggest to people, if they're going to leave a relationship, which, if a relationship gets crazy, there are certainly appropriate times to say, enough. I choose to live one way, you choose to live another. I bless you. I hold a space of love for you, and let's move on. But when I do that, I want to make sure that I continue working on the part of me that I've dissociated from that drew that crazy situation to me so that I don't have to turn around and do it again. People who never learn to forgive, never learn to collapse the projections, crack open their dissociated minds, and find the part of themselves involved, which is what that worksheet, that forgiveness process is all about, and every tool is all about. People who never do that get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? They get to do it over and over and over until they finally go, gee, I've been through this one 87 different times with 42 different people. Maybe there's something in me that I need to be looking at and dealing with. And usually it goes back to somewhere in the first 5 years of life, from conception up to about 4 or 5, or into a genetic memory. That's usually where it resides.
Right.
Always trying to show us, hey, here's what you need to heal next. Here you are. Here's another opportunity. But what the world teaches is, no, they made me angry. They made me sad. The problem is their rage, not my grief.
Michael, can I ask you another question?
Awesome. That's what we're here for.
I don't want to take up too much time because I know there's other callers too, but let me ask you really quick. And I'll just say a side note about what you said about the emotions. I say the same thing about the body. The body really just wants to be well. When there's pain in the body, it's just a message to us telling us we need to change some things so it can move on to wellness. So, I think our whole drive mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually is towards wellness and wholeness. But let me just tell you really quick, I'll just share personally kind of something that was going on for me in this relationship, because my partner has a close association with somebody who you knew a long time ago who teaches something similar but hasn't probably quite developed it as far. And when I would try and have a discussion with him about anything, because he was terrified of being criticized. I think we each have our thing that we carry with us. And my intention was never to criticize him. I wanted to be able to have a dialogue about what we were going through. He would just hold up the shield and say, "What does it mean about you?" Which is really the philosophy you're talking about in general. But it would be like this sword he would hold up at me, like he was not open to discussion, period. Basically, all he could say to me is, "Well, what does it mean about you?" And, I feel like I kind of got, it just really hammered me to where I couldn't even figure out what clarity was anymore. And, it's amazing how confusing emotional things can be when we're, and all I really wanted to do in the relationship was have a dialogue and talk to each other and figure out how to get past things. And I'm sure it didn't put me in a position of, I would say, I know that I magnetically do this thing, but I don't fully understand it, and I would like to talk about it. And so it's kind of funny because I was in sort of a form of what you teach, but we weren't really dealing with it very well, and trying to figure out how to get clarity out of that. And the person I was with just basically came home one day and said they didn't want to be in the relationship anymore because I wasn't willing to own my stuff. And, I'm just telling the truth here because I want answers. And it isn't, I've never been unwilling to own my stuff. We couldn't figure out how to communicate about it. I'm sorry.
Keep breathing.
Yeah.
So
anyway, I guess I wonder what you would say to that. Maybe it'll help somebody else,
Well, the first thing I would say, Carrie, is keep breathing, keep your breath open, and notice where your body wants to tighten up, which means where you want to lock things down and not deal with them. And interestingly enough, and I know you've done a huge amount of awesome work with food, and your book is available online. Let's get your website before we close out our conversation. And people can access some awesome material about wellness and well-being. And, my take is that the reason why people don't change their diets even when they know better is because if they go to the higher vibration that the empowered food, the higher dietary regimen is going to present them with, what's going to happen is those things are going to break down and break loose. And most people don't want to go there. So they, you put them on a new diet, and for 2 weeks they go, "Oh, this is fabulous, awesome," and then boom, they want to go right back to the sugar, the caffeine, the junk, and all the garbage they can. Because if they eat in an empowered way, then they can't hide things from themselves anymore. So, and a very important part of the healing process, I think, is exactly what you've spent so much time doing in creating your book, Super Immunity, and strengthening the dietary regimen and such. But in this particular circumstance, what I would offer is that you represented for him, from the sound of it, someone who would bring up for him the part of him that was still holding hurt from being criticized.
Right. Definitely.
And so that would be his work. So that would be, worksheets, and maybe you'd share the worksheets with him.
I just mailed them to him today, and I also invited him to come down and go through one of your weeks with me. I don't know if he will, but it'd be fun if he did.
Right. So that would be his. And then yours, I would offer, would be, what's it look like? How does it look like your life to be hammered into a lack of clarity into unconsciousness. And I'm talking about go back to the time when you were a child, go back to those 3 early memories, and how confusion, from what you're saying, I suspect that confusion reigned in your household. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. And yes, and going through those childhood worksheets was just awesome. I did them this morning, and it was very revealing. It's just so simple. You start getting such clarity and seeing the picture painted. I had a dad who hammered me, basically, and I know he loved me, but and he's no longer in the body, but you know, I know I'm still feeling that.
So your 77 times 70 worksheet is going to be around being hammered into unconsciousness. That's going to, you know, when they said to Yeshua, how many of these darn worksheets do we have to do anyway? Is 7 enough? His answer was, in Aramaic, what he said was, no, 77 times 70. So in that circumstance where you lost conscious awareness and clarity was where up would come that lack of clarity and then the difficulty in communicating, which would lead to the perfect way of expressing so that his feeling blamed would come forward. Now, with the total use of the tools, he'd heal his feeling blamed and you'd heal your being hammered into unconsciousness.
Right.
And without the tools, it's almost impossible to do. That's why I've spent the last 4.5 decades or so understanding how to do that process and how to support people and walk people through that process so that we each have the opportunity in each situation to access the deepest hidden parts of our own minds, the parts we've denied and never wanted to deal with, and work them through. However, if they're not being worked through, what happens is, you know, in a Healing Through Relationships workshop, we do a thing that I call the file folder effect. And the file folder effect says that when 2 files are resonated simultaneously, and the old saying is that what fires together wires together. So they literally become hooked up. And so the stress, you know, I'm speaking now from the possibilities from his side. The stress of being blamed, coming forward without resolution, he hooks being blamed into his brain's image of you. Coming, exactly. You know, the next time he hooks it in deeper, the next time. What happens?
Let me just insert a really small thing here, too, which is pretty huge, just for your info, is and whoever's listening, is not only did his mother go back to work when he was a week old, and she was a doctor, and she was very driven professional, but a great lady. But his family died in front of him in a plane crash in 1976 when he was 26 years old. And I think his mom and dad and brother, and I think part of him always felt maybe like it was his fault. He said he'd heard, I mean, I don't think he consciously looks at it that way, but he told me he felt he had heard something wrong with the plane before. He's a very mechanical guy, and he didn't tell his dad, who was also a doctor, because he was afraid his dad would just say, oh, and I think he felt criticized by both his parents. So, I mean, I think it's a huge, you know, painful place in him. You still there?
I am. Every time that his files, so to speak, that contain the pain of those traumas is resonated by you being the person he's in relationship with, and no resolution comes, that gets wired into his brain's image of you.
Right.
Then all that has to happen is for him to walk into your space, and just your presence, nothing to do with you, just your presence. And because those files have not been forgiven, have not been deleted from his mind, there's so much stress that he has no clue how to handle.
Yeah.
And that's what leads people to leave relationship. When I come to associate you with more stress than I know how to resolve, I say I have to get out of relationship with you. Because
that is really well said, Michael. I know that experience was what happened.
And so when we recognize that, then to systematically forgive and to create the space with each other to be able to consciously process those things, but you can't possibly consciously process them if one is unconscious. It can't be done. And if one doesn't have the tools to process through it, all that happens is they come up and they get hooked in, they come up and they get hooked in. And then what tends to happen in the pièce de résistance that we get into in our codependence work is that one day, and you may be able to identify specifically the day you did this, one day you did a behavior that violated a goal that he held for his power person. And when you did that, what happened was, in his mind, you were removed from his experience and from his awareness, and what I call relationship substitution. Everything that had been unresolved around his power person, which sounds like it was very possibly Mom, everything that had not resolved with his power person was put into his brain's image of you. And there was a substitution. And the way you can tell if that happened, and most people can remember the day it happened, is all of a sudden they start to talk to you like they don't even know who you are anymore. Like they're talking to somebody else, and you go, do you remember who I am? Do you know who I am? And in their mind, they have no relationship left with you. They are back in direct relationship with their power person. Their brain's image of you comes through their file on their power person. And that's a tough one to work through. But do you remember the day that he started to talk to you like he didn't know who you were anymore?
You know, I don't remember the day, but it went on for a long time. It happened a long time ago. I mean, it didn't, we were in a relationship for 6 years, and I bet it happened, you know, I almost bet it happened a year into the relationship. Yeah, actually, I do. I do remember the day. And we were in Florida at a mutual friend named Teddy's house, and we were out on a walk, and he just blew up and started screaming at me because he didn't think I wanted to take responsibility for myself, and he just put this wall up that was like no wall I've ever experienced in my life.
So that was the day.
A year into the relationship.
Yeah. So that's the day the relationship with you ended.
Uh-huh.
And from then on, from what you're describing to me, he was back in relationship, still trying to resolve things with his power person. Usually when that occurs, if that was the first act in that regard, usually when that occurs, it's not long before the other person will do a behavior that will violate a goal that you held for your power person, and that will put you back in relationship with your power person and remove him from relationship with you inside of you.
Absolutely. That definitely happens. I know that, it happens.
And so the tools, and, it might be worth sending him a link. This will be posted on the website soon after the show's complete. Might be worth sending him a link or downloading the MP3 and sending it to him and have him listen, because when we really care for somebody, we don't want to play the game that way. But there's no choice about it. This isn't a choice thing where one day I say, okay, well, I'm going to leave relationship with you and I'm going to go back in with my power person. It's just a pure energetic dynamic. And if there is still that original connectedness there and the willingness, we've got the tools and the how-to go through layer by layer by layer until you unpack that person from your power person file. They unpack you from their power person file, and now you're back in original live relationship. That's the whole goal of the work.
Whether he and I could end up in a primary relationship again or not, I don't know. I mean, there's part of me that would still be happy if that happened, and I think part of him is, terrified that could happen. I don't know. I mean, I think both of us have been pretty, you could say, damaged by this process, but I think, look where we are. If we both consciously wanted to go through this healing process together, it would be the greatest gift we could ever give each other. Whatever came of it at the end, we've brought so much to the surface and so much to the table, and we trigger so much in each other. Why not go down the path of healing that together? That's what I figure. I mean,
One of the other tongue-in-cheek thoughts that I present in my workshops is that if we had never defiled our temples, if we'd never denied and dissociated it into something in their tissue structure, which creates disease in the tissue structure, and that offers the only cause of disease that there is, if we'd never done that, the purpose of life would be aliveness, joy, and creativity. The purpose of relationship would be support of that aliveness, joy, and creativity. However, the first time that we deny and dissociate from something and lock something away, the purpose of life turns around and changes. And at that moment, the purpose of life is to kick us right square in the limitation. If we could only understand that the purpose of the relationship is to show us our limitation. How do you know if you've got a limitation? Are you feeling it? Are you feeling some form of hostility or fear? Then it's your opportunity to forgive. But the whole culture teaches you, no, it's their fault you're feeling this, so just get them to change, and then you'll solve the problem. But we suggest in our communication, did you hear what I think I said workshop, that you forget problem solving until the healing happens. And so once you've got tools for that, and as I say, that's what I've spent the last 4.5 decades, and we've had contact on and off over the last, 25 years or so, maybe
right.
30, but not much of it. But that's what I've been developing since then, and the systematic step-by-step tools, and we have a whole range of about 40 different identifiable tools for doing that process. So you get two people together who go, okay, we're ready to be that responsible and go through that. It is awesome. An awesome gift to give yourself and your partner. It's an awesome gift to give your genetics, because you change the dynamics of your whole bloodline. If you go back and listen to your dad's story about mom and your mom's story about dad, I bet you've written about it in your 3 early memories.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's playing out now in this relationship. So you change the dynamic for the whole genetic bloodline. And that's why I say that line in the Course in Miracles, it's one of my favorites, is millions yet unborn will be blessed by the work you do.
Exactly. And, the whole saying of unto the 7th generation, and even quantum physics says there is no such thing as time or space, and all things are happening concurrently. So as we shift in the now, we certainly shift the past and the future. And I'm a really strong believer. I'm an iridologist as well, and I can read genetic patterns, genetic emotional patterns in the eyes, so and I can watch them change too. So it's amazing what we do carry in our psychobiological organism that just waits for us. I just absolutely love what you've revealed through, the Aramaic and the work you're doing, and just processing this for so many years with big groups of people that you've, developed it to where it really works. And I just am very grateful, Michael. Just awesome. And thank you so much.
Absolutely be delighted. And Carrie, I'd love to just continue this conversation. You were actually on my mind this morning after speaking to you Saturday, and I was thinking about calling you today and just seeing how the process was going. So I'm glad you called. And, please feel free to call in as often as you choose. And it's so powerful for others to hear what's happening, because everybody's doing the same thing. And
right.
Your website is carrieellis.com, right?
Actually, my website is carrieellis.com, and right now, believe it or not, I've been hacked through my host. I'm rebuilding my website in another mechanism, but people can find my book. People can find my book on Amazon, and it is Super Immunity Secret, and it's just for sale both at Amazon.com and on Kindle. And my website should be back up in the next month or so. I've got a lot of technical work I'm doing behind the scenes to get everything built in a better way. So I do have a really great website with great content. People can also find me on YouTube. I have a lot of videos on YouTube if they just search for Carrie Ellis.
And it's Caryeellis, correct?
Correct. Caryeellis. And the book is Super Immunity Secret. And thank you again, Michael, so much, and I'm sure you'll be talking to me soon.
All right. Delight to be sharing the planet with you, Carrie. Blessings. Thanks for your call.
Okay, bye-bye.
Jeannie, anything happening in the chat room before we listen to another caller?
Yes, we actually have one more caller waiting, but Nene had asked in the chat room, and thank you, Nene, for sending us the information the other day on Hollywood. We got that. But she wanted to know if you could explain, quote, the here and now moment, unquote. What do you mean by the here and now, I guess?
Nene, can you tell me more about your question? I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe you can call in, Nene, because I'm not sure just what that question means. So I need a little more information from you to address that thought. So maybe you can call in, and we'll take the other caller, and we'll perhaps and hopefully We've got about 15 minutes left, so we'll get to hear from you before the show's over.
Okay, we have 2 callers. The next one is area code 541, and I believe that's Oregon.
Hi,
hello.
am I on? Hello?
Hey, Julie, how are you?
No, this is Carolyn.
Oh, pardon me.
Michael, this is Carolyn. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. This is obviously my first call. Julie has been an amazing help to me. I, unfortunately, did not get to see you when you were here in Ashland and or Medford because somehow my name was missed on the email list. And I was so sad when I finally heard you were here. I was just like, oh, my God. But anyway, I'm going to Julie's classes, which I also heard about late. And a lot of stuff is coming up for me right now. And Julie has been amazingly helpful in helping me fill out my first 2 worksheets. This is briefly the story because I don't want to belabor the history. My husband months ago killed himself. I had 2 children at that time. My daughter was 2 and my son was 7. And at that time, I'm now 76. At that time, I had no idea who I was. I didn't know who I was, and I barely knew how to be a mom. I tried the best I could, but my son, who was 7, really it was terrible for him that his dad died. Terrible. And he has suffered for many years because of that and has caused me and his sister great pain. But that's not the issue I'm calling about. My daughter, who is now 48, we had a long talk yesterday. She is reliving her past. Her daughter has just started college, and she has come to realize over the last many years, let's say 5, what she didn't get growing up from me. I did the best I could, in the early years. I did the very best I could, and I thought, I guess not knowing much better, I thought I had been a great mom. But apparently I wasn't. And what's happening now, Julie is my daughter's name, she is very angry. And every time we're together, without fail, at least an hour or more is spent on her telling me 30-some things that she's angry about. And the last time was about 6 months ago. And when I left, I couldn't stop crying. I mean, it's like I just drove away feeling like I was shattered. And yesterday we had a conversation, and again, things from her early years to the present day, she just beat me down. And I did a worksheet, thank God Julie helped me, Oregon Julie helped me, before I had a conversation with Julie. And I was able to not get off the phone and go into incredible grief. I just don't know how to handle it, and I'm a newbie to your language, and certainly a newbie to doing your worksheets. So my question is, obviously, on some level, she's going through her dark night of the soul. And the interesting thing is, she is extremely successful in her life.
Can I break in for a minute?
Sure.
Because our time's running short,
Yeah.
and there's several issues that you've raised. What I'd like to do is kind of interrupt the conversation, and I'm happy if you want to pick it up from there, but it probably won't be today, but I'd love to continue that conversation. But a couple of pieces of feedback that might open a different space for you. The first one is that you speak about your son and how much pain he's inflicted on you and his sister. My offering to you is first order of business for you to resolve this with your daughter, Julie, is going to be to give up the belief that your son's inflicted any pain on you, on either of you, because he hasn't. In the circumstances that your son has been, your physiology has generated much pain. Your daughter's physiology has generated much pain. The belief that it was caused by him instead of triggered with him means that he has to change in order for you to resolve it.
No, Michael, I'm not there. That's not my focus. My focus is not my son.
Okay, I got it. But, you got to do first things first.
Okay. But I don't think he's the focus of the pain I'm experiencing.
I got it. But I'm talking about a principle here that will change your relationship with your daughter. Okay?
Okay.
I'm talking about a principle that will change your relationship with your daughter. But when you explained the whole thing with your son and then said, but that's not why I'm calling, excuse me, I think that's exactly why you were calling. And that getting the principle in relationship to your son is going to change the level of relationship you have with your daughter. So if you'd bear with me, I'd invite you to look at some thoughts, and it may shift things for you. So the belief that he has inflicted pain on you or your daughter keeps you dissociated from that pain and thinking that something outside of you needs to change in order for that pain to be resolved. Whether that's in your mind now or not isn't really relevant, but it's a principle. And when you can get to the point of recognizing a relationship with your daughter, you have this interaction with your daughter, she beats you down, or at least your reality is that she beats you down. That may or may not be accurate. I don't know. I can't tell from here. But whether it is or not really isn't the point. The point is that if you walk away from that in that kind of grief and you speak of being shattered or feeling shattered, I invite you to go back to, and this might be difficult, but I'm just going to invite you to breathe and be with me with it. I'm going to invite you to go back to the moment that you heard or found out that your husband had committed suicide, which is, I hold the space, and that's got to be one of the most horrendous things a person can go through. But if you go back to that and feel how you were feeling, does it bear any relationship to the kind of shattered feeling that you felt in that conversation you're referring to as you walked away from your daughter?
Wow. I guess so.
Okay. So that's where the root of this is. Now, the root may go deeper, may go further before that, but that's going to be offer one of your most important worksheets. So your son, in interacting with you and your daughter, hasn't caused you any pain, but has shown you pain that you need to resolve. By speaking in terms of him doing it, you hook your pain to your brain's image of him, and you hook your pain to an outside event. So now your pain is unresolvable. So now you have to come back around and create the whole situation with somebody else in order to look at and resolve that pain. And so now it's happening with your daughter. When you cannot
Wait a minute. So you lost me for a second.
Okay.
You said that I recreated that experience with my son? Is that what you said?
What I'm saying is that until we resolve a particular quality of pain, we're going to find somebody to recreate it with in order to give us the opportunity to once again resolve it. So
I created feeling shattered by my son's anger or pain.
And by your husband's suicide. And
Yeah.
now by your daughter beating up on you. At least in your mind, that's your reality, that she's beating up on
Yes.
you.
Yes.
So I'd offer there's a really key worksheet for you to start working on. And if you've just started with the tools, it might be too big a worksheet to do on your own. So I definitely set some time up with Julie to go through that on a one-to-one basis. Or, Jeannie is available also if you want to do some one-on-one work around that. But I definitely offer that that's going to be a key piece because it's a recurring pattern. And as you do that and model for your daughter that instead of her being responsible for your grief or you being responsible for her anger, guess what? You were an awesome mom. You were the perfect mom that gave this eternal being called your daughter every opportunity that she needed in order to resolve what she carried into the world and the pieces she's chosen to take from your family genetics. And so I'd invite you to do some worksheets around letting go of you being to blame or not being a good enough mom. Because if you did the best you could do, then you were an awesome mom. That's all you need to know. And
I was, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah. And you put a lot of effort and a lot of energy into that. And I look back at my kids, and I was involved in this work. They were born into it, and there's so many things I wish I could do over that I wish I had known better. And I did the absolute best I knew how to do with what I had. Would I do it differently today? Yeah. Would you do it differently today? Of course. But with what we had, we did. And every person who's doing the best we can do. Now, that doesn't necessarily apply to the person who's just sloughed off and went, well, I know better, but I'm not going to bother. I got that you put energy and effort into that with your daughter. And so you've done an absolutely fabulous job in that regard. And one day your daughter, and maybe you want to send her this MP3, download it and send it to her, have her listen to it, because your daughter's anger isn't about you. It isn't about her childhood. Your daughter's anger is the fact that she has anger. In the same way that you have a capacity to experience being shattered, she has a capacity to experience being angry. And anything or anyone will do, whoever's handy. You take a look, and I can just about bet that she probably has taken that anger out with her daughter. I bet that she took that anger out with the man who was the father of her child. I bet she's looked in the mirror and probably taken that anger out on herself. Any object of attention will do, and what we language is, well, I'm only angry because you did this. No, I'm only angry because inside of me is anger. You're only shattered because inside of you is a reality called shattered. Forgiveness is about removing the capacity to experience a life with anything that could possibly, or that we might think could possibly make us angry, shatter us, cause us pain in any way, shape, or form. To get to the point where as eternal beings, we delete all of the genetics that have to do with generating pain. And we're down to about 40 seconds or so I have to close the show off. And
So may I call you? You offered that before.
First thing tomorrow. First caller in the show tomorrow. Let's chat tomorrow.
I won't. Maybe I can. I'll have to.
Okay, no, in the next day. Okay, bless you. Take care. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeannie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeannie are here every Monday through Friday on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeannie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.